Yes, I know what a confirmation bias is, and I know why it's important to avoid it. But at the same time, when evidence continues to pour in that supports your position, well, you have to give that evidence some kind consideration, don't you? So I outlined yesterday for you my alternate theory of the Joe Biden laptop story. You know the story. We've been talking about it for a week. Biden's secret emails, blah, 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 blah. Social media cracks down. News media won't talk about it. You know the whole thing with Hunter and Joe Biden. And even last night at the debate, which I did not watch, but yes, I saw the clips. Even the president hinted about because, you know, you kind of have to, I guess. The theory that I have is that Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party don't see this laptop story as a negative in the sense that it's going to cost them the election. They are convinced, and quite frankly, the polls support it. And again, I know what you think about the polls. I don't care. The theory here is that Joe Biden's going to win in a landslide. Democrats are going to take the Senate, so they'll be impeachment safe. And they're going to use eventually this laptop story when it finally becomes clear that Joe Biden does have an inappropriate relationship with Ukraine through his son Joe, that he will be forced to step aside because he's a crook, and that will lead to what the Democrats really wanted, which is President Kamala Harris. Now, again, I know there's a few holes in the theory. I know there's one gaping hole in the theory, which is the idea that, you know, Joe Biden isn't likely to sign that bill establishing the 25th Amendment Committee. However, if the Democrats do control the Senate, how likely are the Republicans to look at that in the Senate and the House and go, that's a really bad idea now that Joe Biden is president? The overhead, the idea, the likelihood of an override becomes more possible. So maybe we get that anyway. And you end up with where you want to go. And of course, all this is predicated on the idea that the media right now is reacting to the story as it's meaningless. It's fake news. It's collusion. It's this, that, and the other. But as time goes by after the election, they begin to, as they are wanted to do, in my opinion, they begin to reevaluate the story, and they begin to hint that there may be more to the story than we were willing to accept before. And if you watch their language is very carefully couched. The story cannot be verified at this time. It's an unverified story. We're not going to cover it. And including, by the way, another data point, Piers Morgan tweeted this after NPR, the public editor of NPR, tweeted, why haven't you seen any stories from NPR about the New York Post's Hunter Biden story? Read more in our newsletter, which is then summarized. We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. And we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distraction. Piers Morgan, not exactly a conservative by any stretch of the imagination. What? This is so weird. What's going on with U.S. journalism? Well, the problem, of course, is that NPR, despite its we don't want to waste your time on meaningless stories, also ran a story about Tyra Banks dog walking, which, again, Tyra Banks is a very beautiful woman, but that is not news. And I don't need to hear about it. I don't care. I didn't read the NPR story. I don't know anybody that did. The gist of this whole thing, however, rests on a simple presumption. Now, I know what happens when you assume things. I get that. I understand that you can't always assume things. However, the criminal trial level of understanding is, what would a reasonable person conclude? What would a reasonable person think of this? And when we're dealing with things like the Streisand effect, which is a social phenomena that occurs when an attempt to hide, remove, or censor information has the unintended consequence of further publicizing that information, often via the internet, you have to make some assumptions here. The number one assumption you have to make is that it's not reasonable to assume that Twitter, Facebook, other news medias, the television stations, all those don't know about the Streisand effect. You have to assume that NPR knows about the Streisand effect. If they don't know about the Streisand effect, Twitter, Facebook, social media, and news media, and NPR, and web-based platforms particularly, then you have to question whether they're either A, the dumbest people on the planet, or B, something else is going on. Because, again, even NPR has articles on it that are still there about the Streisand effect. And the fact that when you try to hide stuff, it gets shown. And by the way, they've known this since 2008. This is nothing new to them. There's nothing here that NPR doesn't know when they tweet out, we're not going to cover the story because it's not a story, it's just a distraction. They know exactly what this story is, and they know exactly what not covering it and talking about not covering it is going to do, which is, in my theory, exactly what they want to have happen. They want people looking at this. They want Republicans. They want Donald Trump. They want you and me and other people to talk about the guts of this story, to keep it alive so that after the election, they can go do their 25th Amendment thing. And, or, maybe they don't do it that way. Maybe they just, lean on Joe Biden a bit about his relationship with Ukraine, and newspapers start hinting, hey, there's more to this story than we admitted. And you'll start seeing editorials, and you'll start seeing tweets about, we held this story back because we couldn't verify it, because we're great journalists, because we believe in the truth, getting to the truth of the story before we just run with it. That's what they're going to say, folks. And then they're going to tell you there may be more to this story than we knew back in October. There may be more to this story. It may be true. And if it is true, well, what did the president know? And when did he know it? And how soon can we get rid of him so that we can have what we really want, which is still the end game of all this, President Kamala Harris.